It was a crisp October afternoon. John stood quietly among a crowd of parents and teachers lining the perimeter of the school's playground, where the annual Halloween parade was in full swing. Children in colorful costumes, witches, superheroes, dinosaurs, and fairies, marched by in neat rows, each group led by their classroom teacher. The air buzzed with laughter, music, and the rustling of costume fabric. John scanned the stream of students eagerly, his eyes searching for his own children. As he stood lost in anticipation, a familiar face approached, his ex-wife's neighbor. Without making a scene, she walked past and, with a discreet motion, slipped a folded piece of paper into his hand before blending back into the crowd. John opened the note. Inside were 3 phone numbers labeled, me, my husband, and neighbor garage. Beneath them was a short-handwritten message. Call me when you have a moment, for your peace of mind. Later that evening, after the children were in bed and the house had settled into silence, John dialed the first number. The woman answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting. John, I just wanted to reach out because, well, you've been on my mind, she said gently. I've noticed you a few times. You park a couple houses down and wait. I see you sitting there until your ex pulls in the driveway, and then you leave. She paused. At first, I didn't know what to make of it. So, one evening I mentioned it to her. I said, I think John's just making sure the kids get in safely. She laughed and said, oh, he's stalking me. She said it right in front of the kids, as if it were a joke. But it wasn't. They heard her, and they believed her. That moment hit John, like a punch to the chest. But we watched, she continued. My husband and our garage neighbor, who's always outside. We talked about it. We saw that you weren't hiding. You weren't doing anything suspicious. You were just being a dad, watching over your kids from a respectful distance. She took a breath. Angela even asked us to keep an eye on the house when she's late from work or visiting old friends. That's why we gave you our numbers. So, you know someone else was around. We just want you to feel secure, knowing you're not alone in this. A long pause followed. Then she added with conviction, we don't think you're a stalker, John. We think you're a father who cares. John thanked her, overcome with quiet emotion. For the first time in what felt like ages, someone had seen the truth, had acknowledged it without needing to be convinced. And they'd done so not just as bystanders, but as witnesses willing to speak up. Angela's casual accusation of stalking was more than just a flippant remark. It was a calculated smear, delivered in front of impressionable children and community members. This accusation fits squarely within the narcissistic framework. Control the narrative, vilify the target, and reinforce one's own status as a victim. In psychological terms, this manipulation often involves flying monkeys, third parties who, knowingly or not, carry out the narcissist agenda. In this case, the neighbors were initially drawn in by concern, believing they were protecting a single mother from a potentially threatening ex-husband. They were fed a carefully curated version of reality that painted Angela in a sympathetic light, and John as a menacing figure. But unlike many flying monkeys, these neighbors began to question what they were seeing. They watched, assessed, and ultimately saw through facade. They recognized that John was not a threat. He was a father standing guard, making sure his children got home safely. Ironically, the neighbors themselves had been manipulated, used as pawns in a broader effort to smear John's character. Their compassion was weaponized, their trust abused. Angela's tactic here reflects classic narcissistic traits. Projection, accusing others of behaviors she herself engaged in, controlling, surveilling, and manipulating. Deflection, turning normal, protective parenting behavior into something suspicious to divert attention from her own misconduct. Character assassination, making a baseless claim in front of children and neighbors to implant fear and distrust. Triangulation, drawing others into the conflict to isolate John and create a support network around herself, even if built on lies. This incident reveals how even the most mundane parental actions, waiting in a car, observing from a distance, can be twisted into tools of alienation when filtered through a narcissistic lens. For John, the damage extended beyond his reputation. His children were fed a false narrative, their perception shaped by one parent's calculated need for control. What should have been a simple show of fatherly care was turned into an act of perceived threat. In the war of parental alienation, not every battle is fought in court. Many are waged in whispers, glances, and casual remarks made in passing remarks that echo louder in the minds of children than any legal decree ever could. It was the evening of Uncle Frank's viewing, Angela's godmother's husband, and a respected elder in the family. The funeral home was filled with quiet murmurs of grief, sympathy, and remembrance. Angela arrived, offered her condolences, made her rounds among relatives, and then quietly slipped away well before the event concluded. As she walked to her car, parked along a dimly lit curb just a few yards from the funeral home, she noticed her right rear tire was flat. Despite the recent divorce and the fact that she had voluntarily left the marital home nearly empty, Angela didn't hesitate. to pick up her phone, not to call roadside assistance, not to contact a friend or a past-used flying monkey, but to call her ex-husband, John. John answered, hearing the familiar tone that often accompanied her urgent needs. His thoughts spun. If I show up, I'll be used. If I don't, I'll be smeared. Damned if I do, damned if I don't, he muttered to himself as he grabbed his jacket and keys. When John arrived, Angela was standing near the car, arms crossed, face expressionless. Not a thank you, no apology, just a look of expectation, as if it were his duty. Her car, after all, was parked right at the corner of the funeral home, in full view of several extended family members. Later, John heard from another attendee that someone had asked Angela why her ex-husband came to her rescue. Her response? He's the father of our kids. He has to. The funeral incident wasn't an isolated event. It was part of a larger pattern. Angela's strategic dependence wrapped in obligation and guilt. When her seashore rental property became entangled with a non-paying tenant, she reached out again. This time, she needed more than a tire change. She wanted John to tap into a professional network, expedite an emergency court order, and confront the tenant personally. He did it. Within days, the tenant agreed to vacate. Problem solved. But credit? Gratitude? Nowhere to be found. Then came more requests, often veiled in crisis, such as these examples. The kids are scared. The house is flooding from the storm. Can you come over and help Joe cut out rugs and drywall? Please. Or, I'll be down at the shore. After your custody time is over, can you bring the kids to the beach house? I think you're legally required to. Despite the 3-hour one-way drive, John did it. Because saying no would give her fuel for her ongoing narrative of his unreliability as a father. Another time, Angela claimed she had misplaced her cell phone at a community event and insisted John backtrack through the neighborhood in the dark to help search for it. He obliged, only to discover later that she had left it intentionally in her glove compartment and sent him on a fool's errand to bolster her illusion of disorganization and helplessness. On yet another occasion, she asked John to assist with filing paperwork for a home insurance claim, knowing he had extensive legal and clerical experience. While she presented the task as urgent and beyond her grasp, she later bragged to friends that she had negotiated a better settlement than her lawyer could have. Angela's behavior reflects a calculated form of narcissistic entitlement, where responsibility is imposed on others under the guise of necessity and co-parenting. She doesn't always need to recruit flying monkeys. She creates manipulative moments on her own, using circumstances, children, and social appearances to her advantage. Her justifications are fluid, conveniently shaped to fit the scenario at hand. One moment, John is her ex and irrelevant. The next, he's the father of our children and therefore obligated. She calls on him not from respect, but from expectation, and when he responds, she reframes the story to serve her image, painting him not as generous but as duty-bound. In front of the children, these moments become carefully staged performances. Angela places John in impossible positions, damaging his credibility, manipulating events to showcase his compliance as obligation, not care. Whether at a funeral parking lot, a flooded living room, or a courtroom favor, each scenario becomes another subtle erosion of John's identity and agency. Her tactics aren't random. They are opportunistic, methodical, and always self-serving. More smear tactics, in the least. More manipulation, in truth. Each ask, each fabricated emergency, each twisted act of kindness carried the same goal. Maintain control, manipulate perception, and keep John tethered to her emotional gravity. And in the world of narcissistic abuse, that tether is rarely visible, but always felt.